Hey students, so welcome to the last video in our series of how-to videos for your narrative essay. So this one is about how to write a conclusion. So writing a conclusion paragraph, it's difficult. Like we think that it shouldn't be, but it is really hard to write a really good one. So even if you've mastered many other writing tasks in your career, the conclusion may still elude you, and that's understandable. It's a difficult thing to summarize ideas, reiterate a message, communicate a purpose, and sound inspirational while doing so. And so this year we are going to continue the endeavor on trying to learn how to write that perfect conclusion, the kind that we see when you sit at home and read published essays all night, all those famous essayists use. So for instance, here is an example of the kind of conclusions we might do and have done. So in the past, your conclusions might have just been this: restate the thesis, have a meaningful final statement. You're done with the essay. But that's not really going to get us to a really outstanding conclusion. So here's an example of what your conclusion might now look like. So it might be multiple paragraphs again, just like your introduction. And so in the first paragraph, you might restate your topic, readdress what the opposition believes, and remind readers why you felt like that opposition was wrong. That's something you could do in your conclusion. Then you might go and restate your thesis, but with significantly more depth of understanding. The idea is that when you write an essay, you've learned from your body paragraphs. Your readers have learned from your body paragraphs, and now your thesis can say so much more because it's loaded with all that information that the body paragraphs have provided. And then you might elaborate upon that in-depth understanding. Then you might appeal to the personal experiences of your own personal experiences and the personal experiences of readers. So you might use ethos, appealing to your own personal experiences to give authority, and you might use pathos to appeal to what your readers experience and therefore to create pathos. And then you might have a meaningful statement that leaves a lasting thought for readers, which also employs pathos. And so when it comes to your conclusion, you won't really have a lot of logos in a conclusion. Conclusion's really a time for ethos and pathos. So our struggles with conclusions likely come from the fact that there hasn't been a great deal of direct instruction on how to do the two seemingly simple steps: restate thesis and have a meaningful final statement. You're just told to do it, and there really hasn't been a lot of, help provided for it. And so hopefully when we look at the examples below, it'll provide the help that you've been looking for. So to help you see what this might look like for a narrative essay, we're going to, again, and just like we did in the previous ones, take a look at 3 student samples in the boxes below. For each of these samples, use the comment tools. You won't have to do all of them, but for the ones that you do, use the comment tools to reverse outline the purpose for each conclusion paragraph. We're going to use the terms that we're used to, but we're also going to use our new terms: our restated topic, our restated thesis, our restated opposition, our restated counterargument, elaboration, and appeals to rhetoric, ethos, pathos, logos. So I think this actually shouldn't be here. Sorry guys, I'm going to edit while I'm making my video. So we'll be using these terms in order to reverse outline. Okay, so let's take a look at this student sample. So these are the samples we've been working with. This student sample is a pretty hefty conclusion that we'll go through and reverse outline. And then you have two more student samples. You'll choose one or the other and you'll reverse outline those. I'm doing the longer one for you. So let's check it out. What does she do? So in the end, if I could find the cashier and explain to her what happened, I would explain that it was not her fault. So our student begins by returning to the primary conflict of her narrative, the encounter that she had with the judgmental cashier. So she's returning to it because remember, we just read the first 2 paragraphs of her body paragraphs. She had a lot more in there. So this might seem like very recent to us, but actually in her essay, she's returning back to it. And so then she writes, despite all the races we should learn from, we are all still humans, susceptible to fallacies and stereotypes. I would also explain to her that stereotypes are often based on one individual's action. Thus, good transition, we should not assume that everyone is the same because we all look and talk and smell different. And so she reminds us that the cashier is her opposition. And she restates her thesis, but it's totally different now from her introduction. Her thesis now is, despite all races we should learn from, we are still humans, susceptible to fallacies and stereotypes. And so that is what she has here. So I kind of went on a little further. So she reminds us that the cashier's her opposition. She restates her thesis, but more complexly. And then she explains why she's not angry at the cashier. She goes through many examples of what you would say to the cashier about overcoming stereotypes and prejudices. This brings in pathos because of the repetition of I would creates an inspirational tone. So let's see that. I would also explain to her that stereotypes are often based on the individual's actions. Thus, we should not assume that everyone is the same because we all look and talk and smell different. Likewise, I would, so see the repetition, and we call that anaphora because it's repetition at the beginning of a sentence. I would try to elucidate that Hispanics, including myself and my family, come to this country to find better opportunities, such as a superior education or better paid jobs or assured protection or whatever the situation may be. Expressively, I would tell her that life for anyone that comes to this country is very difficult. It is difficult to accept that you can no longer rely on past experiences. It is difficult to accept that you must adapt to a new living style, climate, new city life, new job, new people. You must live under the same standards of others. So here she uses anaphora with her other anaphora where she says, it is difficult, and then she has new. So she's using a lot of this repetition at the beginning to create this sense of inspiration. Similarly, I would tell her that she had been a victim of subordination because older generations taught her wrongly. Also, I would tell her that to mend this problem, we must fight to keep the innocence of the new generations, and most importantly, teach them to love for all races. Namely, I would tell her, not with the intention to sound resentful, that I chose to believe that her actions were the result of a misunderstanding. So, as I said, as I've read before, she creates this inspirational tone that's sometimes really difficult to achieve by using this repetition of I would, the anaphora, the repetition at the beginning of sentences. And she does that with I would. It is difficult with the word new. She does it all throughout, and it works really well. It creates a really nice pacing and a really good tone. And then ultimately she concludes that she isn't mad at the cashier for her judgmental mistake. And this brings in ethos because it shows that she's considerate of her opposition. Instead of criticizing her opposition, she wants to work with them to make the U.S. better and more accepting. And so we have the reverse outline here. So what has she done? So she's returned to the primary conflict of the story. She reminds her readers about topic. So she revisits topic. She revisits opposition. She restates her thesis. She creates pathos through anaphora, and then she brings in ethos by kind of forgiving her opposition, or at least showing that she understands and wants to work with them. So again, topic, opposition, thesis, pathos, ethos. Now she's done a lot already. Let's see what she does in this last paragraph. I chose to believe her intentions were the result of a misunderstanding because as I grew older, I realized that not all Hispanics are benevolent. Not all Hispanics think as I do. So she identifies what she has learned through her own experiences. She says people hold stereotypes against my people, and my people hold stereotypes against other people. Looks are powerful as well as the image we present to society. Accordingly to that image, we will either be judged for good or for bad. After speaking with her as I got into the car, I glanced at my previous life, and I realized that I am grateful for all my past experiences because they shaped me into the person I am today. And so she explains that she is grateful for past experiences, including the encounter with the cashier, because it's made her who she is today. Therefore, even bad experiences are something we can be grateful for because they make us stronger. And so here we have, she just kind of re-identifies what she's learned, and then she ends with this really kind of like powerful statement about growing stronger. And so for as complex as the previous paragraph was, this one's a little more simple, where it just ends on kind of the lesson. So if we recap the entire thing, what are the steps of this really good conclusion? She restates her topic. She readdresses her opposition. She restates her thesis in a new, more complex way. She brings in pathos. I don't know what number I'm on. Hey. She brings in ethos. And then she teaches a lesson. And that's a really good way to create a conclusion. But there's also 2 other examples that will demonstrate other ways to create a really good conclusion. So pick one or the other and go ahead and reverse outline your conclusion so that you can get some ideas on how you might write your own conclusion next. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.